Thank you so much. This was really interesting, and we know that it's not just about the individual level, and we will continue a little bit around that. It's so much about the going upstream and making the environment healthier. It's easier for everyone to have healthy choices, and one of those things is buying better futures, an economic vision for children's well-being. I'm really excited for this last session before we have the warm roundup about the whole forum. And I would love to invite my friend Katja Cik, the project associate at the Slovenian National Institute of Public Health. She will be the chair of the session. Katja, the floor is yours.
Hello and welcome to the session Buying Better Futures, where we will look into school meals for children's health, learning and well-being, and what a powerful lever they can be. Here to share about the broad societal value of school meals and just to bring us up to speed about their importance is Mr. Martin Brun Jensen, Head of Finance and IT in the Children and Youth Administration for the City of Copenhagen. Martin, please.
Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. It really is a pleasure to be here in such a beautiful city. You know, coming in here and the mountains in the background, I have lots of selfie, Martin and the mountains, Martin and the mountains, and Martin and the mountains. It really is a beautiful city. This is actually my first time speaking at an international forum like this. And before coming here, my team reassured me, your speech is going to be easy, they said. Smooth sailing, they said. Just relax and enjoy your speech. And then, yesterday and today, hearing so many inspiring sessions, meeting so many impressive people, and now I'm going to speak. Well, thank you, team. What can go wrong? I want to start with something very familiar to all of us. Food. Eating, cooking, and sharing a meal. Across cultures, across generations, across times, this has always been a fundamental thing of being human. And even in the story retells, food shows up again and again. In Northern mythology, we have a story about the goddess Idun and the apples of Idun. The apples of Idun were just not like any other apples. They were the source of the god's strength, their youth, their vitality, the very thing that made the gods being gods at all. But one day, Idun and the apple of Idun were stolen by the trickster god Loki. And without the apples, everything changed. The gods grew tired and weak. The age, the lost, was made them gods. Only when Idun and her apples were brought back, the strength and energy returned, and only then the gods truly could be themselves again. And just like the apples of Idun never is just apple to the gods, a meal is never just food on a plate for a child. Because we all know the difference a good meal makes for our moods, for our body, for our minds. We know what it feels like to sit on a table and not just eat, but to belong, to connect. So, if we know this, why I'm standing here today, reminding us of the value of meals. Because recognition, value is one thing, acting on it is another. As public authorities, we operate within an economic system where we are responsible for managing budgets, ensuring efficiency, and delivering results. These are the frameworks we work under. These ensure accountability and provide structure. And at the same time, we are increasingly recognizing that success cannot be measured only in financial terms. Strong economics and responsible governance must ultimately translate into better life for people. It is not about choosing between these perspectives. They go hand in hand. Managing public resources responsibly while at the same time using these resources to support people's health and quality of life. And this is exactly where school meals are interesting. On the one hand, school meals are shaped by budgets, regulation, and procurement strategies. On the other hand, school meals are powerful investments in children's health, learning, and well-being. And just like Idun's apple, the value of school meals extends far beyond what is directly visible. In Copenhagen, we have learned that school meals create real value when they are part of a broader system. It's not just about serving food for children. It's about investing in the people and the structure that make good meals possible. Therefore, we invest in training our kitchen staff so they have the skills to cook nutritious, climate-friendly, tasty meal from the scratch. We work strategically with procurements, ensuring access to food that is organic, in season, and support our climate goals. We prioritize meals that are shared social activity with children eating together, family style, in large dining areas at the school. And first of all, we involve children in cooking their own meals alongside kitchen staff, giving them a hands-on understanding of different foods on their plate. Copenhagen's broad approach to school meals is just not a matter of luck. It is shaped by political ambitions. In the late 2000s, the city's politicians set a clear goal to provide children with organic, nutritious, sustainable, and engaging meals to support children's health and well-being. At the same time, our school meals are structured within a parent-paid framework with subsidies for low-income families to ensure access to all children. And here, Copenhagen's balanced approach comes into play. On the one hand, we have clear political ambition that set a direction of the school meals, and on the other hand, an economic framework that allowed us to implement them in practice. Because we have to provide meals that parents are willing to pay for, meals that children actually want to eat, and meals that can compete with the alternative. This brings me back to where I started. Just like the gods dependent on Idun's apples to be gods, our children depend on quality meals to support their health, their learning, and their well-being. Nutritious and reliable meals allow children to be children, to grow, to learn, to play, to thrive. It is, quite simply, one of the most fundamental building blocks we can offer a child. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Martin, for outlining how, through myth and fact, modern-day Vikings go about food procurement and sustainable food systems. Now, moving beyond the notion of just school meals as simply food provision, this is not easy, but it is doable. And we have 4 amazing panelists with us today who come from different perspectives across governance levels and disciplines to tell us how to get things done, and even more importantly, how to get them done the right way. I would like to invite to the stage Aurora Perez Cornago, the scientific officer at the European Commission Joint Research Center, who will share her insights on EU policy and nutrition research. Up next is the best host in town, who welcomes us to the city of Reykjavik every year to the forum, Ms. Heita Hilmisdóttir, Mayor of Reykjavik, and she will shed a light on the role of local politic leadership. Thank you. Following next is another returning star of the forum, Bettina Metzen, and she is the Chief Procurement Officer in the Children and Youth Department at the Municipality of Copenhagen. She will dive into the nitty-gritty of practical implementation and how to get good food on children's plates. And last but not least, we have Marija Stanojević, a young medical doctor from Serbia, who will touch upon 2 aspects that go hand in hand when it comes to school meals, the youth and health perspective. Now, before we start, let me see, hopefully I can
I'm coming back. Okay.
manage to change the slide. No? There we go. So a little housekeeping rule. Please scan the Slido code and add any questions you would like to ask our panelists. And at the end of our panel, I will choose the winning question to ask our wonderful panel. So you can also upvote other people's questions. Now, without further ado, let's jump in. So before diving into solutions, it's important to consider the practical challenge of delivering consistency. So how can we ensure high quality yet nutritious school meals across different contexts? And my first question goes to Heitha. How can the city government support urban planning or local infrastructure in order to ensure equitable access across all neighborhoods?
That is, of course, one of our goals. That is to make the society better, that everybody can access healthy food, has a healthy environment, and the schools are like a good place to be in. And we have, in Iceland, we have made now the school meals free of charge for the parents, so all the kids can eat. And we have seen a tremendous change in that, especially those who have a foreign background that didn't always come before to the school, to the meals. They are now more eating more and taking more part in it, so the food is also a little bit changing because they have different needs. We are learning more, and the school staff says that the children are at more ease. They're better learners. They feel more like connected than before. And I think that is also a key aspect for us to help people. And you know this, when you go somewhere, if you have a guest, you invite them something to eat, and we sit down and we eat together, and that's how we connect. So for city governments, it's so important that we make those spaces where people meet, and we also make spaces where people can grow vegetables, get education about food. We have been planting like berries in free spaces. Now this summer we are going to talk more about that. So I think you always, when you're planning a new neighborhood, you have to think about the food. Where can they access it? If there's a school kitchen, is it like central? Is it open? Is it a part of the education? And I think it's absolutely necessary to be. So this is just a huge and important bit of this. And now we have the greenhouses with more and more kindergartens, and it's working so well. And the kids are like growing up with growing, even though it's just a potato, which is really easy to grow. But then you know, like one potato can be 15 after 3 months. I mean, it's magic, isn't it? And then you know where the food comes from, and that's how you also relate. So municipalities can do so incredibly much, and they have to take the responsibility of this because it's absolutely our responsibility.
Thank you so much for sharing that. It sounds like a resounding success. Maybe it will convince even more people to move to Iceland. But while on the topic of cities, going to Bettina next, what strategies can be used to maintain consistency, scale, but also meal quality across different schools?
That's a very big question, but I think it refers right into what you say, because we need politicians who dare to set long-term targets, actually, not just for their own little term, but which may be lasting for more years if they do a good job. But anyway, in Copenhagen, like I said yesterday, we had that, like the political goal going from 2001, actually, where our mayor said that 90% organic within 15 years, and it was like a cross-political decision so that it lasted. And then it starts to dribble down to the desks of the procurement lawyers and to the agents who help the chefs cook differently. We have conversion agents who help the chefs in schools to cook. Actually, the chefs are hired in our schools, so they cook on site, like you said, like to get them to, you can smell the bread when it's baked. They can come into the kitchen, ask, oh, what's for dinner today or lunch today? And can we have a test? And can we try the carrot? And what is that you're cooking? Ah, it looks not nice. You know, like, and then they taste it and like, maybe it's good enough. And do you dare to eat it? Yeah, I guess you do. Okay. So all this, you know, that's so important. And that's politics. But without the politics, we cannot implement this because we need the hooks. So I think that's one of the things that really makes the wheels driving. And then we need procurement officers and lawyers and things like that, and economics that go along, that see, okay, we have the politics, we have the will, how do we then implement? Because it doesn't always have to be more expensive. In Copenhagen, we did it within the budget for the meals. So even though we went organic, we just sounds easy, but we changed the way of cooking. So it's less meat, more greens, lentils, and cooking from scratch. So that's, I think, very important. And then getting the kids along, getting them to know how to cook differently. Because once they know this, they bring it home. At least my kid did, and say, Mom, don't do that. And do you know where those tomatoes come from? Those canned tomatoes, they are bought with labor that is not good. You should buy those instead of like, oh, okay. So all these things are important.
So we heard it, just that. Now maybe moving on to the potential of the school meals and the potential outcomes that they can help shape in meaningful ways. So how can they be designed to actively support children's health, well-being, and learning? And Aurora, from a nutrition and health perspective, why do school meals matter for children's health?
Well, I'm sure you are not surprised to know that healthy diets are crucial for growth and development and for maintaining a healthy weight. And childhood nutrition is not just about what children eat today, it's about the health and well-being of future generations. But the situation in Europe at the moment is quite concerning because according to the latest data from WHO, 1 in 4 children aged 7 to 9 years old live with overweight or obesity. Less than half consume fruit daily, and around a third consume vegetables every day, a third. So that's really concerning, and this is where schools may play a very important role, where school meals may play a very important role, because children spend a very high amount of their time at the schools. They consume at the schools about a third of their total daily energy intake. And this presents really a unique opportunity to make healthy meals, healthy food, the food that the option that is there for them. So in many ways also schools are not only about the food that is served, it's also about health, it's also school meals, it's also about health, it's also about equity, and it's also about providing children the basics for a good health for the future.
Thank you so much for bringing that up, and I think it's now time to connect to our youth representative. It hasn't been that long since you've last had a school meal. So Maria, how can students, so children and youth, be involved in designing and choosing meals that are both healthy and appealing to them, which is also very important. So are there any barriers that they face when it comes to enjoying and eating nutritious food, from taste, time, concentration, maybe even social factors?
Yeah, thank you so much for your question, and thank you for having us here, because I want to bring this Icelandic example everywhere. It's not maybe so easy to move to Iceland and experience what Ms. Mayer said, but let's bring that everywhere as much as possible, because that's what students and youth are trying to do. And you gave such a great example of them being involved, and we have to have hands-on experience in choosing what we eat and picking the food, but also being aware about food literacy in the first place, knowing about food labels and what are we actually taking. Regarding barriers, sadly there are so many, and peer norms are probably one of the highest barriers that young people face. Something is cool, something is trendy or not, and it's very, very, like we saw a video just yesterday about water is not important anymore and stuff like that, or high intake of supplements that are not prescribed well. So it is very important to highlight that as an issue and involve young people. First, regarding education, we need to educate them. We need to give them proper, correct information, and then it's so easy to spread. Also, other social and economic barriers are very much present. You gave us some statistics, Aurora, about Europe, but 3 million children every year die of malnutrition and hunger, and school meal might be the only meal they have throughout the day. And sadly, we need to be aware of that and fight that. So I think involving young people in education first, and as I mentioned, food literacy is something that is a priority. Then we can jump into very creative ways on how to have cooking classes, building little gardens around the schools, and so on and so on. But I think food literacy might be one of the priorities, and young people should be very much present in that. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, and as was mentioned before, food and health literacy can also be made fun and useful with the examples that were shared before. But now before we move on to the Slido questions, I have one final question from my side, because achieving a lasting impact requires more than just good intentions. So what role do and can policy, procurement, and nutrition play in creating quality meals for children? So starting with Aurora, what is JRC doing to support healthy school meals?
Well, at the JRC, what we do, we bridge science with policy. And in October last year, we published a report on sustainable public food procurement. This report includes voluntary criteria on the environmental, economic, and social dimensions of sustainability. And really what we wanted to create is a strong framework to support policymakers and other stakeholders to make this easy to be implemented. And within these criteria, we have also included nutritional criteria, which is super interesting. What we did, we took into account the latest scientific evidence together with dietary recommendations, and we translated them into a way that could be incorporated laterally into tenders. So we also included a specific criteria for infants and for children, and some examples for example include limits in free sugars and salt, encouraging the consumption of or the provision of fruits and vegetables every day, and also offering whole grains quite frequently. But this is where public food procurement really plays a very important role, because it determines which food is going to be bought, served, and ultimately consumed in public settings, including schools. So that's why including nutritional criteria into public food procurement contracts is so crucial, because we can shape the food that is going to be served, and healthy foods may be the default food. Yeah. So I think this is probably the way to go. And at the moment, we are in the dissemination phase, so we are working with the Joint Action Prevent NCD, with policymakers and with procurers across Europe to help them implement these criteria.
Perfect. Thank you for providing the evidence that is needed then for policy and implementation. And note to self, putting the report on the reading list for sure. Now moving on to Bettina, how do policy requirements influence your day-to-day procurement decisions and supplier choices, trying to translate those nutrition guidelines into practical purchasing decisions to stay within that budget?
Thank you for the question. And I just want to address the audience and saying, do you know how unique this panel is? For me, it's like amazing, because we have scientists, politicians, civil servant, and a doctor. Like, how amazing is this? Because we actually moved from science to policy to implementing it and then seeing the results. For me, that is magic. And that is actually what my job, that's how we create it. Because thinking of policy, like nutritional guidelines, you set the target of 0.3 grams of salt per 100 grams in bread, for example. I think, was that correctly put? Yeah. Yes. 0.3 grams of salt per 100 gram bread.
Of food, yeah.
Children aged 0 to 3. When we looked at this in Denmark, it doesn't exist. So then we know that the politicians want healthy kids and healthy meals. So we started working with the suppliers, and by that actually trying to create a bread. And once we have this bread, we'll put it in the procurement. We'll buy it, and then we'll get more healthy kids. And we'll also work with scientists and doctors to get them to measure what effect could it potentially have for these kids. Because as you said, 1/3 of their daily meal is served in schools.
Yep.
So thank you, politicians, for daring. Thank you for making the evidence and for showing the results. And we are the middlemen trying to complete. So I think that is the role, and that is why this panel is, I look so much forward to it. So thank you.
Thank you, Bettina. So now for all of you to listen closely to this, but Maria, what is the one thing that you would change about school meals to make them healthier and more enjoyable for the young people?
This is going to be a very personal answer, but it might not be for children. I love spicy food, but that might not be the best thing to say. What I will try to focus on here is, in my head, when we talk about food, we actually have to tackle hygiene and access to clean water and soap. Maybe you're not aware of it, but you'll be surprised of how many schools do not have access to soap and clean water per se, and not to mention oral hygiene afterwards. It is something that is always forgotten when we talk about nutrition, and one cannot go without the other. And as much as we try to have a fancy, colorful meals and make them look very enjoyable to eat and so on, we also have to focus on the environment and the cafeterias. The noisy cafeterias are reducing the absorption of all these nutrients that we are talking about. So it is very important to, have all of that together when saying, oh, I cannot change one thing, but if I'll carry my spicy sauce. But what is important, you mentioned salt, and yeah, we really have to highlight that. So might be the very short answer now after all of this, maybe the salt intake for sure. Yeah.
Well, technically changing the entire system is just one thing.
Yeah, basically.
But last but not least, moving to Mayor Heitha, what role can municipalities play in setting better standards for school meals versus leaving all of that just to the national policy?
Yeah, I think it's really important that the municipalities and the cities take responsibility for the meals. Because you have to take the guidelines that come from the governments, the national guidelines, and you have to implement them into food. And you cannot just say to anyone, you just, so much salt and so much fat and so much protein, and good luck to you here in this kindergarten. Hope you will find out of it. Sometimes that is done, and then we are not reaching that criteria. That is like the guidelines are our goal, and maybe we are serving something different. And that is actually our responsibility as politicians to both set like guidelines for our meals, for the meals for the kids. And you say like the children in schools, they are getting 1/3 of their food. I mean, children in kindergarten are maybe getting 75% of their food. In the kindergarten. So we are like, and that is maybe the first 4 years of their life, and will continue like to have influence on their health their whole life. So it's so important that we both, that we have the guidelines and we say what we want to serve. And we are clear about that. So we have, like in Reykjavik, we have had a food policy. We just accepted now the second food policy now this week. And we also made new procurement rules to be able to implement it better, because we are learning also from Copenhagen, because we have to work together. But for those who are purchasing, they have to know what they are going to purchase. And that is our responsibility to say that. And now it's been like all over the media that we were saying that we want people, children in kindergarten, not to get ultra-processed meat. And people are like, why? I mean, you don't want them to smoke. I mean, it's evidence. We know it's not good for them. Why shouldn't we say we are not going to serve it? I mean, there can be exceptions, like we have some smoked lamb on Christmas. Maybe you get that once a year, but that is not like the regular food. And for us to say it, it's so important, because then the people in the kitchen know what they are going to do. The people who are purchasing for us know what to do. And I think this is absolutely, we are not always, we have the guidelines, and I'm a nutritionist, so I know this. We have been producing guidelines and evidence for so long time, but the politicians are not taking the responsibility of implementing it. They're just thinking that the people in the kitchen is going to do it, and they cannot do it, because public procurement is always like money, money, money. You have to buy the cheapest thing, otherwise you're doing the wrong thing, if there's no policy. So I want you all to go home. Yeah. Thank you. I think you should all go home and say to your politicians in your cities or municipalities, what is the guidelines? What is it? What are you going to serve my kids? Because it's really, really important. And of course, also the elderly and all those. But the kids, they cannot choose themselves. And they get these meals and they deserve the best.
Thank you so much. I do think it's very rare to find a mayor that is so passionate about this well-being and nutrition. So thank you so much for sharing your thoughts. Now, as promised, we will jump to the big Slido question that was the most upvoted. So, and I think this one is very nicely wrap up our panel. And it says, how can we get healthy meals from schools and into the homes and habits of families at home? So maybe we start with Maria here.
Yeah, it is very important to include parents and legal guardians into nutrition of children, of course. And what has become, is trying to become a trend is personalized medicine. So why not to have precision nutrition and actually involve them into conversation? And I come from the country where, sadly, around every possible school there is a bakery, junk food. So it is very important to avoid that, and how to avoid it without parents involved. And yeah, so it is a task to think about, but we cannot divide those two main factors that are creating and tailoring children's well-being in the end.
Bettina?
Well, just returning to this beginning of our session with the keynote speak, the sharing of a meal, it gives us courage also to dare to taste something different. So I heard several times during this conference also, oh, my child eats at school, and now they dare to eat fish, for example, at home. And they often come saying, Mom, you have to cook this because my chef at the school cooks this. I actually think this is the key. The kids inspire each other. They, with professional help from kitchen staff and other people who takes care of them, saying, oh, try this, is this good? And then they dare to, and then they go home, and they say, oh, I want to try that green thing that you can buy. It's a broccoli, yeah, that one, where they usually don't eat it. So I think that is the key, giving them the food, the variety, lentils and things like that. They will bring it home. I'm cooking a tomato soup, which was my kids' chef cooking for them, and they still love that one. It's the only tomato soup we eat at home, and it's cooked from scratch. So I think that is the key, at least from my point of view.
That's very nice.
And bringing the kids in to the kitchens. It's not dangerous for them to cook. They can handle a knife, you know, like under supervisions, of course, but they can actually cook and be a help. So that is...
Sometimes we don't know how to crack the egg, but it's important to
but they can, you know, like,
with them.
and then inspire each other like we're doing here, because I think that is also conversation. And if you have procurement officer, bring them. We will talk with them. We have an international and European food procurement officer network through Joint Action at Brandon City. And they are more than welcome so that we can share experience on how to then procure for the food that the chef can cook for. So thank you.
Heather.
Yeah, I just think this is one of the responsibilities of the school, that is also to introduce a lot of different kinds of food, so you can learn like what the foods, the names and the taste, and that you are like, this is also education, and I don't see why it is not considered so everywhere. So, and if children are tasting different things in school, it's more likely that they will like also eat it when they come home, and they will learn more about it. So I think this is just education. And I mean, regarding environment, we started like thinking about not throwing plastic or paper into the same bin. I mean, it was the kids who like learned that in school, and they went home and said like, now we are going to do this. And they can absolutely do that also with food if they get the information.
Yeah.
Because they are so open, and they are like, they want. Most of children want to be healthy, they want to eat good, and if we are not telling them what it is or showing them, then they can't learn it. So it's so important, and I think there it starts, and all parents want to do good for the kids, almost all. I mean, we say that all. We all want our kids to be healthy and be happy and to learn to eat good food. So I think this is the start, this is the most important task, and I think especially when I hear politicians talking about this obesity amongst children and what can we do, and I'm like, well, you are serving them meals. Why not make that a healthy meal and teach them how to eat healthy instead of like shaming them through media? Just an idea.
Aurora, any last words?
Yes, well, I think the most important points have already been mentioned. So I think it's about, from my point of view, involving parents, involving families, involving children is crucial, co-creation activities so that the kids are involved in the menus, in the creation of the menus, also in cooking. Also, what you were saying before about these greenhouses, no? And for them to see where the food comes from, because many kids don't know where a tomato comes from. So I think this is really crucial. So it's really multiple factors that need to come together.
Thank you. So with that, we're going to conclude the panel. And now that you've learned about how Nordic gods used to procure food, now maybe you can be the food procurement gods in your own communities and countries, taking the experience from the panel and bringing them to the plates of school children across Europe and the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you.